Hello, 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 and welcome back to another episode of Today's Weather Tonight. Here, as always, I am your meteorologist for the evening, Cloud Hudson. That's comedian slash meteorologist. Don't hold me accountable. You can hold me accountable for anything, but know that I'm going to say it was a joke. Okay, so what are our top vibe stories for tonight? Let's go ahead and check it out. I'm gonna go ahead and share my stream. That is our earthquake 3D we're looking at there. It's looking little crazy, little wild here on earthquake 3D. Let's take a look at volcanodiscovery.com though. All right. Let's see. May 30th. So, since yesterday afternoon, the eruption site has significantly decreased on the Reykjanes Peninsula of southwestern Iceland. We've got a new lava flow map of it. That is a pretty extensive lava flow for just the one day it's been erupting, and quite the fissure series seems to be pretty well aligned with the previous fissure series. And you see the other lava flow maps in gray. You can also see that this lava tongue extended really far south and west of Grindavik this time, like really far south to the side of Mount Thorbjorn where the Svartsengi is. It's kind of funny that the upwelling is happening underneath the power plant, but the eruption's happening up here, but the lava still spills its way back down to where it eventually upwelled. I was the Blue Lagoon at this point. But right now it looks like at a reduced level over the last night and this morning. Oh wait, I never switched this to the view I like. Here we go. There we go. Yeah, lava flows continue to ooze mostly out of the southwest and north. Additional activity is occurring in several parts of the zone with a crater, and it's got a bridge or a side vent coming out of that main spatter cone. It's really interesting to see this really now well into as when it's cooling, when it's like not quite as freezing cold out as it was in the winter time. Interesting texture differentials there. Volcano has had an eruption. Had an eruption at 7:29 there. You can really see a little plume around the volcano there. Mount Ibu continuing to erupt, Lewitobi and Samiru and Dukono over there. Looks like we've got explosive activity continuing on Lewitobi and Samiru. Volcanic ash coming out of Merapi still. Same with Dukono, and possible volcanic ash emissions in Santiaguito in Guatemala. Same with Fuego, definitely has ongoing volcanic ash emissions. Same with Ecuador. In Sabancaya, we are reaching flight level 240 with our ash emissions, which is pretty tall. If there was any other let's look at our earthquakes right now. Just checking in. We've got yesterday had a pretty late in the day 4.7 at 70 kilometers depth right here in the middle of Iran. Also had a old 3.6 up here on the border of Iran and no, it's just on the Russia side of it. Who's this big one right here in Greece? This is a 4.1. Yes, a 4.1 off the coast of Turkey. That's at 21 kilometers depth. Let me take it back down to all quakes because we do have a number of low-level quakes going on in the Greece area. I'm going to turn shells off just so we can see the locations better. And remember, these Canadian ones are artifacts of the fact that I have the Canadian feed turned on, but they're like a 48-day feed. So when I do it, the slider for 2 days, it kind of screws it up. Got some deep 4.8 at 148 kilometers depth here in, is this, I want to say that's Bolivia. Geography for 300. Who knows geography? Me? Certainly not. A little bit. My internet connection is very slow today. This is very odd. Very odd indeed. Yeah, Bolivia. Okay. So we had this deep 4.8 in Bolivia. We've got a sweep of 3 at 2.8 sweeping through. Also had a today at 12 kilometers depth. One here in the New Madrid seismic zone at 11 kilometers depth. And then our flurry of Oklahoma quakes, which is pretty typical. Same with the West Texas quakes. But interesting that we're getting some 1.5 and 1.6 down here in South Texas. Not out of the ordinary, but also coincident with the weather being very severe down there. Not looking at any large quakes in the east. Biggest one in the continental United States today was this 3.7 in South Dakota, 36 kilometers northwest of Pierre, right at the mouth of a river delta where the, really at Lake Oahe, right near the Cheyenne River Reservation, right where the lake and rivers kind of meet up here, the Missouri and the Bellefourche River. I don't know what the real names of those rivers are, but it's right here at the epicenter of the earthquake was right here in this little stick out part of some, like a piece of land that sticks out into the middle of the lake. So it's kind of like the lake had an earthquake. Looking up at Canada and Alaska, not too much going on other than our regularly scheduled extensive low-level quakes. Nothing to note there, of course. Just normal baseline rumblings. Then we got some surface 5s over here on the Kamchatka Peninsula. We got a 5.0 and a 5.1 here, surface quakes. And that is following the pattern of surface quakes spreading, rippling out, not necessarily transferring the momentum, but there's an internal wave rippling those out. Oh, and they've just disappeared now. Don't know where those came from or why they showed up as recent. Those are from the 25th. Never mind. Ignore what I said. Let's see. Out to the rest of the world at 0 kilometers depth there. Deep and a 5.0 shallow here in the Banda Sea. And that gets us back to where we started. So pretty quiet on the earthquake front other than that South Dakota quake and a little rippling outwards of the surface and deep coupled quakes. I think you can see that there's like a few coupled of same epicenter, but one's deep and one's shallow. That kind of sandwiching is spreading around. Also, we got 3 different quakes here off the coast of Taiwan. That's like 4.8, 4.7, and 3.9, all around 20 to 30 kilometers depth. So let's talk about what is really the big news today, which is more severe weather in the United States. Of course, we've got a nasty setup here in Louisiana. Earlier in the day, we have had some tornadoes on the ground and warnings in Texas and Oklahoma, I believe up into Kansas and South Dakota as well. But right now we are looking at 2 overlapping mesoscale discussions, one for a severe thunderstorm watch, one for a flash flooding possible mesoscale discussion. We're looking at 1 to 2 inches per hour rain rates here with this beautiful Boeing moment peaking here near Alexandria and possibly warnings active just near Glenmora, west of Oakdale. This is where we are seeing some potential tornadoes right now. Let's see on single site radar if we can get a good look at these guys. They're right past the radar station. Okay, yeah, this is a little kink in the line type tornado right here. And this is an interaction region type tornado where this line is getting sucked up into DC. Here, I'll draw them. Maybe. There we go. That was of Glenmora. You can see that really well defined hook shape on it. That's a kink in the line type of tornado where it's like rippling. You can see 2 different types of formation of tornadoes in these Boeing line segments right here. Let's see if they show up on velocity well. Not as strong of a velocity couplet signature as you would expect from the shapes we saw on reflectivity, but also the orientation of this radar station is probably skewing that a bit. Like, let's see if this one shows it better. Yeah, you can see the couplets a lot better if we're looking at the side that doesn't have to peer through the rest of the rain. Oh, when it loads. Yeah, you can see them right here and right here. And honestly, looks like there's another one trying to start between Oberlin and Oakdale right now. Looks like maybe that rippling of the sheet is going to reproduce the same type of spin there. Oh yeah, and it just got noted on my storm, little storm reports right here. Just noted as a potential tornado forming right here near Oberlin, Louisiana. So keep an eye out for that, Oberlin, Louisiana. That is not the only place with severe storms right now. When I started this broadcast, we did have a tornado warning up here near Seminole and Brownfields, Texas. But looks like that line of storms has kind of moved on to being just a frontal. Oh, yeah, and then they are going to get an outflow boundary from this other set of storms. This is probably going to spin these up. So I have a feeling that once this outflow boundary gets past Lubbock, if it's still strong, it could add some more vertical motion to these guys, which already have really large reflectivity values. I mean, this was warned for lime-sized hail. This is not nothing. This is a very severe, yeah, tennis ball-sized hail. 2.5 all of solid ice. That I thought, and it's what's be really careful over there. Also got a really interesting outflow from this storm. I see the dry line behind it, but man, that rain cooled air is just really going up and sinking and pushing out from here. You see this line, this curved segment that's extending outwards, almost like radially from the radar station in Amarillo. And of course, we see all kinds of radar anomalies coming out of that radar station at the same time. Probably just like skipping and interference patterning over the high echo tops here. We can see some spinning Cheeto motion. We can see some double helix rotating, imagining the front of the storm as two entwined springs that are rotating. You can see that rotating in the plane parallel to the Earth's surface there. Nice and pretty. Let's see if any of those act out of turn or get a little bit isolated where they get their own inflow and outflow. It could produce a tornado, but that is why we are warned for severe thunderstorm warning. Not with tornado possible yet, but yeah, that'll be sweeping into Oklahoma soon. As we look towards the DFW area, we're just looking at that big line segment, and this monster of a storm, sprawling all the way from Santa Ana to Eastland, centered around Rising Star and Cross Plains right now. It looks like it's got some decent wind with it. You can see the stationary front here just like perfectly perpendicular to the direction that this is propagating in. And you can almost see two hands rotating inward like this. The two flanks of this are getting sucked inwards. Those are like mirrored motions of vorticity with one big wind gust behind right there. Do you see what I'm saying? Just watch it a few more times. Very interesting formation there. Probably going to develop the southeast axis, if I had to guess. And I don't like the cell near in Brownwood system here. This is the one that looks like it is a good candidate for being a hook echo producer. But at the moment, it is not showing any tornado signatures, but it does have considerable damage threat warning. The severe thunderstorm warning does have a considerable damage threat with winds up to 70 miles per hour and quarter size or 1-inch hail. So looking a little nasty out there in Texas tonight, especially Louisiana too. That is just ugly. Winds and the coastline. You uh, might not be right in the direction of the strongest winds, but you're gonna have some nasty weather tonight. So that's what's been going on today. Yesterday, oh, and there is also a mesoscale discussion for up here between Nebraska, South Dakota, and Iowa. This little area, the Sioux Falls area, we are also looking at a flash flooding possible event. And that's because if you look at the direction of propagation versus the direction of the shape of the storm, they are moving kind of parallel. So there is this is a pretty slow moving rain system that is able to dump a lot of rain while it is over a place. Let's see. I did have a lot of headlines for you today because there has been some wild weather going on globally. Brazil's flooded south has seen the first deaths from disease as experts warn of coming surge in fatalities. The floodwaters are receding in southern Brazil, but not fast enough to avoid contaminating local water supplies and potentially spreading waterborne bacterial diseases. So that is really unfortunate, and everyone there is working the hardest they can to take care of people. Interesting long-term weather news. Tonga's volcanic eruption in 2022 could cause unusual weather for the rest of the decade, new study shows. And that is because when Hunga Tonga erupted, instead of putting a bunch of sulfate particles into the stratosphere, which usually cools the Earth, this was an underwater eruption. So it actually launched a bunch of water vapor into the stratosphere. And that contributed to the much wetter than expected summer of 2004. And the growth of the ozone hole in 2003, because when you have water in the stratospheric layer of the atmosphere, that's the very tippy top one before you start getting into the ionosphere, that's water is a necessary component for the reactions that eat away at the ozone hole. So with extra water vapor in that layer, they could the ozone hole could degrade faster. And amid flooding, there's also the opposite of flooding, which is water shortages amid searing heat in India. That is really it's tragic. People are doing all that they can. The heat is really bad this year, though, because I think, where does it say it? Yeah. Yesterday, they observed temperatures of, yeah, on Wednesday, they observed 52.9 degrees Celsius temperatures. That's like 127 degrees Fahrenheit. That is ridiculous. I want y'all to start thinking about this as the Celsius scale being 0 is freezing water and 100 is boiling water. If you are at 52.9 degrees Celsius, that means you are technically closer to boiling water being the temperature outside than freezing water. That is a terrifying thought. There Yeah, they're investigating whether that was an observation anomaly, but it probably wasn't, because this has been a really, really bad heat wave in an area of the world where they know how to deal with heat waves. It's like, oh god, this is the worst they've ever seen. So really unfortunate. They're doing the best they can to get water to everybody, but again, as we've talked about with wet bulb temperatures, sometimes water just isn't enough, because you will just sweat and sweat and sweat and never cool off if your wet bulb temperature is above 37 degrees Celsius. Um, and also, we are in peak mountain climbing season for Mount Denali, and there are some stranded mountaineers up there, and rescue crews have been hampered by weather, the clouds and high winds specifically, in their rescue efforts. So that is unfortunate, but it is another weather headline. Speaking of weather headlines, let's take a look at our global. Let's look at our global weather. Did I switch this? Yes, I did. Okay. All right. Oop. So we're taking a look at null Earth here. We can see the higher elevations of South America are looking like they're cooling off. Winter is settling in nicely here in the southern hemisphere. Compare this polar vortex, this Antarctic polar vortex, to the pathetic excuse for a polar vortex that we saw in the northern hemisphere this winter. It was just all over, just roaming around free. This is a pretty nice, tight vortex around the poles, which is what you want to see in the wintertime, when the thermal gradients are supposed to contract and shrink back down, get colder. Well, they want to contract and shrink back down in the summertime, but you want to see them evenly distributed through the lower latitudes and higher latitudes in the wintertime. Like, you see this little trickle of cold air going across the Andes. That is the south, but yeah, not looking. Thankfully, I can't even say thankfully the temperatures aren't too hot in Brazil, because it's still pretty warm. It's still pretty tepid. So any water that's just sitting around stewing with sewage is going to be very dangerous. We are having a bit of a heat wave as we get a ridge poking up from Mexico into the mountainous western half of the United States. We're also getting a bit of a trough here set up over the East Coast, which is bringing unseasonably cool temperatures to the Appalachian Mountain region. Like this 43 degrees Fahrenheit, 43, 43. In Maine, we're down at 34, and it is May 30th. This is the time of year when you expect the Arctic polar vortex to really like suck it in, but it is having a tough time. The vortex ain't vortexing very well, and so these parcels of air are getting a little lost, getting a little too far south. It may seem counterintuitive to think that cold temperatures in May and June are global warming, but that is, in fact, what is driving this anomaly, is the lack of cohesion in the Arctic polar vortex. That's what's helping us have such a deep, deep cold trough. As we look into the Pacific, we see those two typhoons that are still going on, one right off the coast of Japan, one right off the coast of China in the South China Sea area. But both of those not forecast to make landfall right now, even though they look like, right, like both here and here, they look like they're right about knocking at the door of being on land, they're not forecast to make it onto land. So that is good. Here's that nasty, terrible heat going on in India right now. Yeah, just clicking around, just estimated temperatures up here up to like 103 degrees Fahrenheit. It's nowhere near what they had Wednesday, but they could definitely use a break in this area. Now, if some of the cold air from the Himalayas could just sweep down into this pool of the Indian subcontinent, that might help cool people off. But we got some really high relative humidities especially along river and coastal regions, and that is where people tend to settle because that's where there is water. That's not a great thing. Not a great thing for trying to survive a heat wave. At least it's a dry heat, is what people say about the desert. But this is not a dry heat. This is the opposite of that. This is a wet heat. Speaking of wet heat, we've got a lot of moisture and rain going on around the equator globally. That is to be expected. That's our ITCZ area is where we tend to look for creation of our tropical lows. But currently, I think we've still got dust extinction pretty high coming off of Africa. So we haven't been able to spin up very many storms yet. We haven't been able to kick off this allegedly supposed to be extreme hurricane season yet because we've just kept the lid on this. Now, will that make it like a boiling pot where keeping the lid on makes it go faster? Who knows? Certainly some climatologists like to think that they know, so let's listen to them. Listen to people who know what they're talking about. Let's see. We take a look at the misery. Pretty damn miserable here in India. I don't even know what to tell you. Yeah, feels like 38 and 40 degrees C. And that's a break from what they've been getting. So nasty. And this area where the typhoon is developing is also incredibly warm. Remember, those incredibly warm sea surface temperatures and air temperatures are what can contribute to the hotter it is, the wetter it can get, and that makes a bigger storm. Very, very basic meteorology there is hot air holds more water. So the hotter the air gets, the more water it can hold. Let's see. Now, let's turn to taking a look at our Schumann resonances. I have been very sleepy today, so I have a feeling that these might be high. Oh no, I was wrong. There haven't been too many big spikes today. I mean, seen normal elevated activity at mode 1 and mode 2. It looks like maybe we had some frequency shifts as well, but really only in the last hours when we've seen a little bit of a spike here in the Schumann resonances. Nothing compared to 2 days ago on the 29th. Well, I guess that was just yesterday. Yesterday and the day before. Tuesday into Wednesday was a really big Schumann day, and then the 30th and 31st we have been pretty normal. Let's see. Amplitudes. Yeah, pretty damn calm, I'd say. A little bit of a spike recently. Except we can see that little Rogue 4 spike. That's a very interesting little signature. Let's go now to look at our solar weather. because that is picking up a bit. Let's see. From 32 to 41. We've had like 9 or 10 coronal mass ejections today. Let's take a look at some of them. None of them are indicated for a partial halo. All right. And you can see Venus there moving into frame right here. Beautiful. Beautiful. Looks like we've got quite the Spitfire sunspot group rotating onto the sun's view now. Yeah, getting into good view, and there's Venus there. Oh, we had an M1.9 recently. As our 24-hour max is the M1.9. That comes after yesterday we had that X1. Other little M5.3. We've had some tapering down of these. We've got an M1.09. That is the biggest thing that we've gotten recently. So not too much, but I think we are ramping up to have more of an active solar weather phase than we have been in for the past 2 weeks. See, hemispheric power is up, and we are up to a KP index of 3, planetary K index of 3. We're not technically in the disturbance storm time index geomagnetic storm conditions. Density has increased a bit recently, and we are in a strongly southward or southerly component of the interplanetary magnetic field, meaning the magnetic field of the solar wind that's coming to us is going to be easily coupled with the Earth's magnetosphere. Speaking of Earth's magnetosphere, let's take a look at the magnetosphere today. This is just wind speed. So it's showing that we are having a little bit of backflow. We've got the moon is exactly on the opposite side of the Earth from where this is viewing, because we are at a third quarter moon today. Really interesting to see this little ebbing backwards back towards into our magnetosphere. You see that? This little anti-flow node here. It's going really fast right behind it, but right in front of it, it's actually coming back to Earth. Interesting. And we see the sphere is way up. Oh no, that's the density. Let's look at the pressure. So, grain of salt. But you can kind of see the charged radiation belts around the Earth in this pretty well, actually. I think at these times when the moon is square to the sun, you get the most magnetosphere would be like if it weren't full moon or new moon pulling the gravity in or out of the alignment. Really, really strong pressure in the magma cause ion precipitation event. Not that we have indicated that we've seen any. So, from talking about that, let's talk about our planetary weather for today. We've got Venus moving ever closer towards the sun. Uh, Jupiter has moved into the first degree of Gemini, so it's making a proper within 1 degree orb trine to Pluto in Aquarius. We've got the Saturn in Pisces. That's probably giving us a lot of feedback about our emotional and physical boundaries today, especially when it comes to social outings and what you owe people and how you want to be seen in the community and all that good stuff. We've also got Mercury about are ready to talk of revolutionary change or make a groundbreaking scientific discovery announced, or I this is big revelation hours to me. Maybe the revelation is that you are establishing your boundaries. I don't know, or that there is a new piece of technology coming out. We really don't. We won't know what the astrology means till it unfolds. And with that, I am pretty tired today, and I did this a little bit early, so I haven't got anybody in the chat like usual. So I am going to do a short little reading and then get on to bed because it's kicking my butt today. There's also really high pollen counts in my area right now, so that is part of it. Let's get a postcard from the liminal space. See what we're working with here today. What's coming in from the cosmic level, from the cosmic liminal space, the dead mall of the universe. All right. This one. It's Mama Aya. It's got a beautiful rendition of the earth and mountains, stream and forest and air and clouds with a giant weeping eye in the middle of the sky. This says, there is grief implicit in the process. We were born whole, and we must relive the brokenness we experience along the way. And what you get instead is wisdom. There are no guardrails on this life. People fall off the edge all the time. And even if you don't fall, off the edge is where we all eventually end up. The only true certainty for all of us is that this life will end, and life cannot be stored up like currency. It will disappear the moment you attempt to hold it in your hands and examine it. It would stand to reason that this, whatever this is necessarily the happiest card, but definitely one that rings true, and I think is really reflective of the divine feminine nature of destruction and creation being two sides of the same coin, and the reason that we fall into the density of the human experience being to examine what it's like to feel far from wholeness and oneness. The reason we become human is so we understand how amazing God is with when you don't have connection. It's finding the beauty in like kind of it's a masochistic life where we intentionally go into this place of like falling short and not quite meeting our ideals and things not being as abundant as we know they are in perfection. But we came here to get away from perfection and see what the nuances of things are like without the perfection. We're here to experience the juicy details of what the rotting of the earth feels like in a body. So that is, with gratitude, that is where I'm going to leave it today. It's a very important message. So I love you guys very much, and I will see you tomorrow night. Goodbye.